Progress.
I call this meeting of the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals to order. Roll, we have Noel, present, Brian,
Present.
Josh,
Present.
and no other parties, no other members present today. Approval of the agenda, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda with the moving of item 5, Appeal 25-11, to the second position, and then, where Appeal 25-08 is, and then just everything sliding down one slot.
So moved. I'll
We
second.
got a motion and a second to approve the agenda with that change. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Approval of the minutes of the April 21st meeting of the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals.
So moved.
Got a motion
And second?
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to get into our regular business now. I suppose we could do the election of the vice chair before we do the narrative part here. So, we have an opening on the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals for the position of vice chair. Is there somebody who would like to serve on that?
I'd be happy to.
I'd be happy to. Brian, would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion and nominate Josh.
Great. I will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Josh, congratulations, you're the vice chair of the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you saying that. All right, so as we move into our regular business here, just for all of you who may not be regulars, the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals hears and acts on appeals for variances from city zoning code requirements. The members of this board are appointed, and the board acts as a quasi-judicial body during these appeals, which means that appeals are presented somewhat like a case might be presented in court, and the board acts as the judge and determines whether to grant the appeal by a simple majority vote. For each item, we will hear from the applicant or the petitioner and staff, as well as any additional witnesses where appropriate. If you are the applicant or the petitioner for an item on tonight's agenda, please come and take a seat at the table when your item is called, unless you're online, in which case we'll make your picture bigger or something. As we get to this item, Appeal-2511, it is the goal of the Board of Appeals to provide and conduct a hearing that is fair in form, appearance, and substance. To ensure that this hearing satisfies these goals, would each member of the Board of Appeals please confirm the following for this particular appeal by stating "I confirm" if you are able. And this is consideration with possible action on a request from Hilkiah Easterling, applicant and property owner, requesting to exceed the side yard setback standards for a swimming pool at a single-family home at 502 15th Avenue. I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm. Great. All right, would the petitioner please join us at the table here? And we will first hear from staff on the request. So, John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, take it away.
All right, so the property I'm looking at is at the corner of 15th and Lake Street. That's the corner property here, is with the star. The issue that comes into play is the request for putting in a permanent above-ground pool spa. Shall we maintain a minimum front yard setback of 25 feet and a rear or side yard setback of 10 feet. The applicant is looking to have a rear or side yard setback of 4 feet from the westerly property line. The southerly property line, they're looking at the pool at 13 feet. So we're not seeing here from this aerial photo in 2023, but the pool has been placed back in this property, as noted, 13 feet from the south line, 4 feet from the westerly line as well. This property, there were some violations that occurred where it was noticed last summer that a pool was placed up, and so looking to correct that with a variance bill. This is a sketch of what the petitioner brought forth as far as the pool is at. I'm going to say this is not to scale because it does not reach 13 feet and 4 feet, but they're looking to put forth a 16-foot wide diameter pool on the property. There's approximately 20 feet to to the western property line from the western side of the house, and approximately 10 feet from the southern property line back to the house. These are approximations, are using the aerial photos, but just to give you a heads up as to what the area is. The pool itself is 16 feet. Now, we're placing a 16-foot diameter pool on the edge, on the western edge of the property. That means that that pool is going to come ever so close to touching the side of the property, or it could touch the side of the property based off of being 16 feet in diameter. There's no explicit code that states a pool must be 3 feet off of the property line, but accessory structures, if it was a building, would have to be, off of the actual building itself, the primary structure. But in this case, the pool would be very close to the actual primary building, less than 3 feet based off of the size of the pool that was provided by the applicant. This is a view from Lake Street looking back on the property. There's now a fence that's been placed up on the property itself. The fence does need a permit, but it seems like it meets the code as far as typical fence standards for a parcel in relationship to a side and rear yard line. These are some pictures provided by the petitioner, one of the pool that you see back along the side of the property, and I'd say that after mentioned 13 feet or so from the property line back to the south. There was no image provided of the pool back towards the western property line. These additional images provided by the petitioner noting a 16-foot pool that this came from. And so they are seeking relief not for the south line, but for the west line as far as the placement of an above-ground pool. I will note, this pool itself, you see it as far as its structure, is a permanent structure if a pool stays in place for longer than 7 days at a time in the code. So you could, in theory, put a structure like this up for a weekend, take it down. It's not a permanent pool, it doesn't have the same regulations, but if you keep a pool and it's in place for more than 7 days, it becomes a permanent structure, and it's under the guise back of 44-520.
Questions for staff? So, so it's a 25-foot front setback
Correct.
and what was the rear and side?
Rear and side is 10 feet, so not a problem for the pool placement here, as the front is a corner front, so you have frontage on both Lake and on 15th. So the front, not a problem, but then being along this western or southern line, that's where you need to have the 10-foot offset from your neighboring property.
Okay, and so it's 4 feet from that property, and it is at least 10 feet from the other property?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions for staff? All right, let's go to our petitioner. Could you please give us your name and address?
My name is Ikea Easterling. I reside at 502 15th Avenue.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please tell us why you need a variance.
So I'm requesting a variance because I have children that reside at the property. I get them every week, every other week, I should say. So, you know, they enjoy spending time with dad and coming over and hanging out and barbecuing and all that fun stuff. And I've paid for the pool approximately 3 times right now, just in fines and fees and permits and variances and all of that other fun stuff, fencing and all that fun stuff. And I also got a letter from the neighboring property also approving that setback. This is Tim from that 4 feet variance saying that would be okay.
I can't submit this into the record because it does not have the appropriate authorization from the party to where, when we send out letters to folks who are neighbors, it states in that letter, you need to have addressing that you are affirming to the testimony being true. All what we do in the beginning of each individual session, we don't have this on this letter here.
Okay.
Yeah, is it possible that anybody's online for this item?
Try to follow if you want. If you like. Try on.
So in the meantime, though, I think you should keep your presentation and then.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's hear any other thoughts you've got here.
Yeah, so I'm just, like I said, I'm just requesting the variance from the side to side. From the north to south, it seems to be fine, but because of the properties are so close, I'm just requesting the variance to have it approved just for that side wall.
How close is the pool to your house?
It's about, like I said, 4.5, between 4.5, 5 feet.
So you've got it as close to the house as it is from that adjacent property.
Correct, so it's about like 5 feet either way.
Okay. Other questions for our petitioner? Any other evidence to share with us?
Yeah, like I said, receipt after receipt after receipt. Again, this is just some of the fines and some of the fees I've paid to try to keep this pool, so, you know.
Sure.
I'm even paying more on my property taxes just because of this pool, so, I mean, like I said, I would just like to keep the pool there for the kids.
Right,
That's all.
yeah, I appreciate that. Unfortunately, the cost you're incurring as relates to that isn't really a factor in whether or not.
Yep,
we
I
want to
get
make
that,
a
yep,
variance on the
absolutely,
zoning.
absolutely.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, we'll deliberate here, and we may ask more questions as we're exploring this, so. Gentlemen, thoughts?
I'm having a hard time with a couple of the factors here. Number one is, as we look at the neighborhood zoom out, I'm not seeing that there's anything unusual about this particular lot that in the neighborhood. In fact, it looks like one of the, you know, maybe wider lots looks pretty well equivalent to the one right behind it there on 16th Avenue. So I don't know if there's an exceptional circumstance. I'm also a little bit concerned with the absence of detriment, even when we're talking about the pool setback or things like that. If this thing is filled with water, if there is a problem, I think that, you know, one of the reasons for the setback is to ensure that these issues are contained on your own lot and not inundating a neighboring lot. So if something were to go wrong with the pool, it's too close to that fence, I think it really does create some risk of a detriment. So I'm having a hard time with those two particular areas.
Brian, anything to add on that?
Excuse me, no, as I'm just in my third meeting and now sort of learning along with these rules, I agree that it's hard to meet all of these conditions for this variance.
Since I just kick things off here, I would move to deny the variance at this time.
I'll second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to deny the variance. Any further discussion? I think I'd like to just note, as I look at this in terms of the tests, we've got 5 tests that we need to make. Preservation of intent, you know, I think the setback requirements are related to some of the things that Josh was saying there. I don't know, when you've got a small footprint yard, if, you know, trying to just fit it in as best you can and cramping some of those setbacks a little bit. I don't know that a variance would be inconsistent with the spirit and intent of the regulations. I certainly think that, you know, that the enjoyment of the property and having a pool is something that, you know, some folks choose to have on their properties, and I don't see, you know, a fundamental reason why the petitioner should not be able to have that. The absence of detriment, I got to bow a little bit to Josh's comment in terms of the difference in setback distance. I think the neighbor's letter, although not admissible, you know, says that, hey, at least the next door neighbor is you know, not thinking that's a substantial detriment to their property and isn't impairing, you know, their interests. But, I do think on the exceptional circumstances front, this parcel is not unusual in a significant way, other than it being a corner, but that's not actually working against it in any way in the case of the setbacks here, nor, can I find that the hardship test is a little bit challenging as well, just due to the nature of maybe a smaller pool was possible or something like that that might meet the setback. It's
I'll just get a small pool at this point. I mean, I wasted thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars with this pool, so this is costing me a lot of money.
Yeah,
A lot of
and
money.
I
So
hear you,
I'll
and that's a
just get a
challenge.
small pool, and that way it's 10 feet away, and we'll be done with that, so. You guys have a good day.
Right, so we have not voted, we'll take the action now. All those in favor of the motion to deny, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right, on to Appeal 25-08, consideration with possible action on a request from Garrett Bader, applicant, and Mosky Corporation property owner, requesting to exceed front yard setback standards for an infill building at 1116 Hobart Drive. We will hear again from staff before we hear from the team. John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, please let us know about this.
Should we certify first already?
Oh, yeah, the conflict of interest, I forgot that, why didn't you remind me to do that? On this matter, please help me by confirming the following for this appeal. I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm. Thank you for keeping me on my toes, Mr. Vice Chair. Well done. All right, John, take it away.
All right, so what we're looking at here is chapter 44-554, table 44-2, note C. This is for infill lots where at least 50% of the front footage of any block is built up of the principal structure. The front yard setback for a new structure shall be equal to the average of the existing structures, except that any structure which is set back 20% more or less than the average may be discounted from the formula. So with said discounted formula, the front yard average is 24 feet. Petitioner is seeking a 20-foot front yard setback. This is the property. We're looking at the buildings that are existing, coming up here from Mason Street back down to the local street to the south. When you take the existing buildings combined and then you take off, so we give the petitioner a choice if they want to take off either a lower or a higher amount depending on where the setback they may want to put it in. That equals an average of 24 feet on the overall block. This property right here that's nearest is about 31 to 32 feet or so from the property line. There are some as high as 34 to 35 feet away from the property line. Those got discounted, but the rest all remain the average for the overall block. This is a view of the property from the street. You can see said buildings that are nearby. The one to the right is at a 0-foot setback from the property line, and the one to the left is a residential home. This is this site plan that the petitioners have set forth. There's been a lot of going back and forth on this one with the petitioners as far as variances go. It was down to just one at this point now. Their initial plan said quite a few more, but they did take care of those along the way. This one did not, though. What you are seeing for a dash line is taking the front of the property from the southeast corners of both the building to the north and south as far as where they would average out if you were taking the fronts of said buildings. You'll also see, and I'll make this on the next photo here, where the 15-foot setback is. The code states that in an R3 district, which is what this is, the front yard setback is 15 feet unless you're in an infill lot. This is an infill lot, so you have to have the averaging. If this was a brand new subdivision, they could place this at 15 feet or the suggested 20 feet and it wouldn't be an issue. But because this is infill, you take into consideration what's happening in the rest of the neighborhood. There are a few other images that were provided by the applicant. This one being a site layout. This next one showing some images as far as a grading plan and where stormwater pond and low points are on the property. I'll let them expand on any points they want to make with that, but that's just for relevance. This is what those plans are showing here. So overall, the building itself is a 30-unit building. For the rest of the site plan, they appear to be just about they're not coming forward with any other variances. If there are changes that need to be made, they'd be minor changes to the building, but it does fit otherwise, and it does fit the zoning. The zoning on this property was changed back last year for a very density use, which multifamily is a typical usage.
Now, do you typically apply that test to a whole block when there's a fundamentally different zone?
Yes, we do.
But, and the image you showed with the dash line, the setback of that first residence there to the south is further back than the average of all the ones on the block?
So these residents right here vary between, I believe, 30 and 35 feet as far as the front of house setback from the property. And this building here is directly on the property line at 0. So, yeah. We don't have this type of averaging when it comes to, say, commercially zoned lots, but this isn't commercially zoned. It's zoned as an R3 lot.
Which is more commercial than a R1 lot, but I get you. So you did not include the setback of that corner property then in calculating the average?
We included this as far as, yeah, that's a part of getting it down to being at 24 feet, correct.
I thought you were eliminating all the ones that are at off more than 20%.
Right.
Of the,
For this, it's more or less. So when we choose that, let's say that they wanted to put it back further, if that was a choice, that they wanted to have the setback further than the rest of the properties. At that point, we'd be eliminating the one that's the 0-foot property, and say then that because the infill itself, as far as the averaging goes, we're giving a standard as far as you have to place your property, your building at this spot. There's no, I want to place this back at 45 feet. You're doing the average of the overall block. So, let's say for instance, an applicant came in and said, I want to move this back as far as possible. I want that back. In that case, in this averaging, we'd knock out the 0 and say, okay, what's the rest of the properties? 31, 33, 35, so on and so forth. Do the averaging of those properties and say, okay, now your front yard average would be around, I'm going to guess 33 feet or so. That's as far back as you can set a property or a building on this property. So in this case, they want it as far forward as possible.
it works for
Yeah.
them by keeping that one in.
Yes.
The other piece in here, John, again, going back to that dash line between the two.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a fundamentally different use, right? Because we're looking at a 30-unit building versus a single-family detached home.
Yeah.
And you're looking at commercial building to the north of that.
Correct.
That's sort of a, hey, and this is a wide infill. This is not like a single-family lot infill. This is a large parcel, right?
Yeah.
That's getting developed maybe for the first time. So maybe not infill in my mind here, but just looking at that dash line, why doesn't the city apply a test like this by just saying, hey, let's just draw a line between the fronts of the two adjacent properties and see where the setback lines up relative to that, particularly when it's such a wide parcel or a wide span you're looking at?
Right. I don't believe the code states that test. That's why we're here today.
Yeah, right,
So,
but I'm just saying,
yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm trying to lead you into telling me that you think that might be a better idea in the future. Because it just seems to make a little sense, this is a little awkward. Anyway, I've been hogging all the conversation here. Gentlemen, are there any other questions for staff? I don't have any, thank you for that. Any other questions for staff? All right, let's hear from our petitioners. Please state your name and your company address for the record, and then I will swear you in.
Garrett Mader, 300 North Van Buren Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54301.
Garrett, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, and you, sir?
I'm Brad Reimer with View Vicker. We're at 400 Security Boulevard in Green Bay, 54313.
Brad, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, let's hear your perspective on this.
Well, thank you all for having us. I'm at a conference, so I especially appreciate the Zoom option and Brad for being there holding down for it. John gave a great background on it. Property was rezoned recently to R3 to support the multifamily development. The code requirements that John talked about, 15 versus 20, where we are at 24, what the averaging would say that we need to be. What we are requesting is a 4-foot variance relief due to what I've called the quirk in the code. And sometimes, no, you just hinted at part of it too, which was you're looking at infill versus new. But in discussions with staff, one of the biggest things that we believe we've uncovered is that the R1 existing residential to the south was likely a holdover from what was the town of Hobart before this property was annexed into the city of Green Bay roughly about 1965. So in a weird sense, there's nothing wrong with how the code would require the averaging or the presence of that to protect neighborhoods in periods of redevelopment. But it's like a former municipality's code is driving what we can do today, or the wishes of the city in rezoning this, based on how that deeper than usual front yard setback on the R1 is driving what the average is. Based on what we understand from speaking with staff, the city has never had an R1 setback as deep as 35 feet. And it's not to say that even Hobart did, but one probably could show up and the others followed, and here we go. So now we're being beholden to that previous code pre-city. That's a little bit of work that I don't think our code could ever truly imagine, let alone, to your point, know whether one could be considering this as infill or as new and beholden to a different standard. In responding to the application, there were 3 answers that were asked of us, so I'll briefly summarize that. It asks for unique physical characteristics, unnecessary hardship. My previous comments pretty much go to that the previous municipalities' code is creating a quirk in code where we're being beholden to it unnecessarily. The second question asks for protection of the public interest, and I believe that we are adhering to the city's wishes for the type of development that we are proposing here. And the places where that previous municipality's code could trump in a similar situation, something like this, are pretty rare. You know, could you have another few areas on this part of town that used to be the town of Hobart, or on the far east side that used to be the town of Preble? Maybe, but most of the development in both those areas was post-annexation, meaning it's a rare chance that this could set a precedent that could be abused in some way. Finally, the application asks for a scenario of variance denial. What would happen if the variance is denied? And what I'd like to point out is that, here, of course, we're proposing new development, but we are maximally developing the site. The amount of bedrooms that we have, 40, meets the exact limit of code. We meet green space, we meet parking requirements. So I'd like to remind the committee that we are not overbuilding on this site or asking for this relief to build more than what would ordinarily fit versus an argument of we'll just make the building smaller. Denying this would really allow that previous code to have the property be less than maximally productive, which we really shouldn't want to see, which again, I believe even the intent of averaging would never want to see. So with that, I will gladly answer any questions that anyone may have, and thank you again.
So, do we want to hear any comments from Brad before we ask Garrett questions, or should we, what do you guys want to do?
I mean, if Brad has any additional
Any
thoughts.
I don't have anything additional to say. Gary is obviously the mastermind of this. I'm the body here to answer any questions that you might not have in front of me.
Okay. All right, so questions for our petitioner? Just one, let me jump back to the staff questions. John, so what's the, if this were, a greenfield development, we didn't have the infill angle on this, what's the front yard setback for the building?
If this was, let's say, a brand-new plat,
Yeah,
and you had not developed 0% of the overall
Right.
parcels, 15 feet.
15 feet.
I will note, if you were making a plat, and you had a 20-foot setback,
Right,
and you decided in the first, you have 10 lots, in the first 5, they were set back 40 feet. That 6th lot has to be at 40 feet then.
right,
Because
because you've
created that.
created that expectation of that
Right.
setback.
Yes. And I will also note, there may be some folks who are online right now who may want to comment on this as well from the public.
So any other questions for staff? Or for our petitioner, sorry. Or for either party, I guess.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure, please.
So, do you have the grading plan in there?
Yes.
So part of the reason for our 20 has to do with the stormwater management in the lower left corner, southwest corner of it. We're really tight in there. We're grading just to get the stormwater calcs to work on this site. That's the area we have to use. I believe it would be in your packet too, but you can see how tight that southwest corner is. So moving it back to the 24 was not an option in order to maintain the city stormwater requirements.
Got it. Any other questions for either the petitioners or for staff? Is there anybody in the room or on the call that has additional evidence to be presented in this matter? Holder. Yes.
Kathy Hinkfist, 525 Antelope Trail. I just want to speak.
Kathy, do you swear or affirm that any testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes,
Please proceed.
thanks. I'm here to speak on behalf of supporting the setback at 20 feet. In looking historically at the way things were, and today, the way the buildings are set up in that area, 20 feet still makes sense. And I don't think utilizing a calculation that, we as a city may have inherited many, many years ago, makes sense. And the building and what they're trying to do for development and with our need to increase housing in Green Bay, I am very much in support of the variance.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Again, last call. Is there anybody else in the room or online who would like to present some evidence in this matter? Is there any other questions from the board for our petitioner's staff or Alder Hinkfist? All right, we'll return to our conversation here and deliberate. I'll take a shot here if you guys are willing. I think that that the granting this variance as requested would not be inconsistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations, particularly given some of the other findings I'll discuss in a second, but also that diagonal line from the corner of the building right up to the parcel line, and then the other one to the adjacent property, showing that this new building is still going to sit behind that line, I think is a tip of the hat in terms of the preservation of the intent of this that works for me. I think there are exceptional circumstances, and Mr. Bader outlined them in the note that this parcel is being impacted by the acquisition of other property from another municipality, that some of the code that may have shaped the south half of this block wasn't ours, and that I think also the size of this parcel, its shape, the split between the R3 and R1 zoning, all of these I think are a collection of circumstances that are exceptional in this here. I think that the variance does not impinge on the property rights of the petitioners, nor takes away anything. This is, as we talked about, if it were not this exceptional parcel that had this strange history and the other lot, but were just a new lot in a new place getting built on, we wouldn't even be here, because the development as proposed is by the book, and even beyond the 15-foot minimum setback. I don't see any detriment here to the public interest. In fact, I see the addition of additional housing to be something that's very much in the public interest. and the development plan seems to be well thought out and reasonable, and noting, as the engineers pointed out to us, pushing that building back jeopardizes the ability to manage the stormwater from the impervious surfaces at the property, and so that would maybe be increasing detriment if we were to force something there, or another change that might result in less than properly managed stormwater. And I don't think the hardship here is self-imposed or based on economic grounds. It's really based on the history of the evolution of this property and the neighborhood context that it sits in. And I don't have a problem granting the variance based on, I think, the satisfaction of all those tests.
The only thing I would add is, with regard to the preservation of intent, I think the intent of the code is to prevent a hodgepodge of setbacks, and that line between the northernmost and property to the south really shows that this is right in line with what that code is looking to do is to actually smooth out that line of sight with setbacks. I would support everything that Noel said. I would, if you're looking for motion, I would move to approve for all of the reasons supported.
You're going to be the champion of seconds, Brian, if you take this as a second.
From a purely,
Let's act on the motion first,
Okay.
or second the motion first, and then we can discuss some more. Unless you don't want to approve it, in which case you could refuse to second this motion.
I will say.
Okay, all right, so any further discussion? Yes, now,
I'm just curious, you could, how I see it is, you could make an argument for, some detriment to the neighboring property owner. I'm trying to understand some of the subjectivity that I see in these five points here. So I'm just trying to understand the process more. I'm absolutely see it fitting the character of the neighborhood. I mean, and understanding that, Mason Street, the commercial district is right next to it. The building fits in with the neighborhood to me. So no, I'm just trying to understand the process more.
sure.
I guess my thoughts on that detriment piece is number one is the variance creating a substantial detriment. I think if you move that stormwater piece is compelling to me. If you move this building any further back, then you are going to have a substantial detriment. Apparently, I'm talking about water a lot tonight. That you're not going to be able to manage the water on the property. So I think that, for me, is a substantial detriment if it's moved anywhere else on that lot to comply with the setback requirements.
Yeah, and maybe if we can go, I think this is fair to discuss a little bit here. John, if you could go back to that image that shows the site plan.
This one, or?
Yeah, or with the one with the building shaded, the close-up there. So, I mean, I think if, I were looking at this and thinking about being that adjacent homeowner, looking up the street, right? I can look out my front door, my front window, and see well up the street. If that 30-unit building was, at 15 feet from the street and snug down to that, south lot line, that I looked out my front door and I only saw a building, that might have changed my perspective on the evaluation of whether there was a substantial detriment to an adjacent property. But seeing particularly, again, whoever thought of doing the dashed line there to show the relative setbacks between these things, it was a smart play, because for me, I see sight line being preserved for that adjacent property. And for me, in evaluating that detriment, I see a minimal impact on that property to the south. That's, I guess, Brian, just how I might have interpreted that
No, thank
as I'm
you.
looking at it.
Thank you, Noel.
All right, unless there's any other discussion, I'll call the question. All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve as requested signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you, Ken.
Up next, Appeal 25-09. Consideration with possible action on a request from Courtney Carr, the applicant and property owner, requesting to exceed front yard setback standards for a swimming pool for a single-family home at 1330 Sandstone Place. Please, in our effort to make sure that this hearing is fair in form, appearance, and substance, confirm the following statements for this appeal by stating I confirm, if you are able. I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. All right, so we'll begin in just a moment with you, Courtney, but first, off to John. John, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
All right, so back to pools. 44-520, sub A, permanent above ground or in-ground pools, 25 feet from the front yard, and that's just going into play right now, not the rear yard or the side yard setback. So the applicant is seeking a corner front yard setback of 15 feet rather than 25 feet. So you're seeing the property right now. If you happen to have just looked on Brown Dog for this property, where you just got your packets back on Friday, you would have noticed this was two parcels and it's been combined into one. That officially put onto Brown Dog in that time, but this was two separate parcels on this property, which you're going to note on this page, just in case you're wondering, what's up with this property line that's happening here? It is one parcel. They're both owned by Courtney, and it's been combined into one. This parcel now has a deeper rear yard. What you're seeing here is the green line is the right-of-way of the adjacent street, and it's not a full right-of-way, it's only 35 feet or so of the overall 70, but because it's right-of-way, this acts as a corner front, even though as you'll be looking at the street, that's what the street itself looks like. With that in mind, if somebody like the applicant is coming forth for a swimming pool request, we have to look at where its property line setback is on the south line as being a front yard setback. The applicant is seeking to place a pool, and I'll get to that here, at approximately 15 feet with where the structure itself is from the southern property line. There's a shed there, legal non-conforming, the shed couldn't just go there, but don't have records of it from the past, and it's met its non-conformity numbers, so we can just want to acknowledge it's there, but that's not part of the process here. And then in these drawings, it shows the entire overall property as one contiguous piece. The applicant put forth a few additional photos that was not in your packets. One of those being this photo here, house back to the north, and this is going to the street that has been platted at least.
Is that the shed I see between the two larger trees on the right there?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay, so that's about the distance back that pool would be.
Yeah. So these are some additional photos from the rear on the property as far as how wet it might be and the operating back in that area. Property owners seeking to place the pool in this area. If they moved it back to where it was 25 feet, we wouldn't be asking this question here in front of us today. This is again a bit more of a zoom photo if we want to discuss that in the future or during the rest of this meeting. What I want to note is this, where you see that yellow mark, that's the property itself. And then what you're seeing here is future officially mapped right-of-way, or roads, not right-of-ways, but roads. So the purple lines would be in our parlance here, a potential future road. And so if anybody were to maybe own the property, they can't put structures on that road at all, because there could be a roadway that's proposed for in the future down that way. So it's pretty clear that the goal when this map was made was that you'd have a connection going from Sandstone back over to Hillcrest on the east-west road. I will note, though, this green area here is wetlands, and it happens to go through a lot of the area where you would have the connection. You're not disallowed to put a roadway through a wetland, but it is hard. do that in the current structure as far as what it means with the DNR. And it's much more harder to then develop parcels to place a house when you have wetlands. That wetland itself is many acres, one contiguous piece. It's pretty large in the back of the property itself. So, these practices right here where you just have a 35-foot right-of-way wouldn't happen nowadays, but it happened back in the day where you get half the right-of-way where you're doing plating, things of that sort. And so, as far as this road coming in the future, it could happen, but it would be very challenging for that road to come through in the future. And as noted, if there wasn't these challenges as far as wetlands, I think you'd be certain that you would absolutely see a road going through in the future through this area because it makes sense to connect this part of the neighborhood. As we look in a larger view here with the street view or the overall map, back over to Hillcrest, which is the last north-south street that connects in the intermediate fashion back to the far west side. So that's why we have to look at this through the lens of it being a front yard. Even though in the practical sense of how it is right now, it's a side yard, but there is that possibility that this could be a road in the future.
Sure. And John, going back to the plat map, or the parcel map, is that stub of right-of-way there, that is on the official street, that is dedicated right-of-way?
It's dedicated, yeah. It's not,
And in this case, that parcel that seems to be at the end of it, right, because we don't have right-of-way continuing beyond that little stub. But was that just some way of one of your predecessors making sure there was some sort of public access or public right-of-way leading to that giant parcel behind everything?
not that I'm aware,
Okay.
no.
Can I answer that?
Well, yeah, we'll get to you in a second. Okay, yeah, you can tell us the story of the
Yeah.
neighborhood if you know it better than John does. Okay, I'm just trying to see why, what that was, maybe somebody was thinking there. And I noticed that the north line of that coincides with the north line across the street, but the south line doesn't, almost like those undeveloped parcels to the south, maybe one of them was gonna get another 35 feet of dedication for a future roadway maybe going through there, and all of that hasn't happened. There's no rounded corner, say, for example, in the south, which would seem to me that work is unfinished in terms of getting to what that future road plan might have been. And, yeah, and is it even going to be that, given the wetlands and other things for the development? But thanks for making sure we understand the general weirdness of this. Is there any other questions for staff? If not, we'll move on to the petitioner. Brian or Josh, any questions for John? John, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll just note, I don't have the exact specifics on it, but just making an educated guess. This is part of an overall plat to the north of that line. This is part of a plat to the south of the line. On the south of the center line of the east-west road, there are two different plats at different times when this came into play. Planning staff do not like when we see these type of, it happens, they're from a bygone era.
Right.
It leads to issues.
Yep.
And we get the intent of a road going through here. It makes sense that you have connections in that way, but acknowledging that with the wetlands that exist back that way, it is a challenge to actually have that happen.
Yeah. And in a sense, you've got an undevelopable road there with that bit of dedicated right-of-way, because that's not going to conform to your standards for building a street with only 35 feet of right-of-way to work with.
Oh, right, with 35 feet we can't.
Yeah.
You have to get that extra
Yeah. Yeah.
part down the south part
Right.
of this, to the south of the right of way to send that road to keep on going further back. Yeah.
Sure. Right, anything else from you, John, right now?
No.
Anything from our board members? All right, Courtney, please tell us your name and address.
Courtney Carr, 1330 Sandstone Place.
And Courtney, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please tell us about the situation.
Sure. So, John, if you can go back to the one we were just looking at before, the plot with that one. Okay, so 12 years ago, I put an addition on my house towards the south. And that was actually, back then it was plotted as a road, so it had the full 70 feet. But then what they said is the wetlands that was actually voted on, they said, okay, this is gonna be wetlands, environmentally friendly. And they actually let the parcel to the south absorb it. So, but they said I couldn't absorb the top half because they did not want to landlock those parcels behind me. So that's kind of where that 35-foot came from. And he's not wrong, it is wet, that's what kind of my pictures were showing, is how wet it is back there. So really, I'm looking for 15 feet instead of 25 feet. It is in my backyard. It's not in the front yard. It's not a detriment to anybody. There's no neighbors around. As he said, I have the parcels, the assessor, they combined them. It just wasn't on Brown Dog, is that what you said? So you wouldn't have seen it, but it was done. The two parcels behind that are owned by 5814 LLC, which is actually my parents. They have no objection to this. They're actually on the call. I have a letter from them as well, but it doesn't adhere to the standards, so they're on the call. So if you want to hear from them now or at the end, just let me know. They do have a question though. Is it *6 to unmute themselves?
They can just unmute themselves.
I
Otherwise,
think
which
they
one
just
are
called
they?
in. They're the one to the right, the 1715, yeah.
I don't know if you need to do anything now.
There.
Oh, there you go.
They're unmuted.
Hello?
Hello. Please,
Hey, we're on.
yeah, please let us know your name and address.
Yeah, Debbie Balaki, W2567 Woodview Lane, Marinette, Wisconsin.
Debbie,
And Richard is also on the phone.
okay. Debbie and Richard, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Great. So what evidence do you have to add to this matter here? I understand you own the lots behind Courtney's.
That's correct. We had the 3 parcels behind Courtney, and we've bought them to eventually increase the size of her lot. We have no intent to build anything back there. We understood that the proposed road that was going to head into those wetlands is no longer a possibility because of the wetland situation. But we anticipated that Courtney may need to increase her acreage there for future plans, and we have no objection to that.
Great, thank you. Members of the board, any questions for these folks? All right, thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the other things that I have to say about all of this is, so we already talked about how it's a half of a road, and John kind of touched base on that they couldn't even request to build. If it's only half a road, they won't get permits for utilities or anything like that. As for preservation of parcels, and the 2 parcels behind me are owned by my parents, and you just heard from them. And I think the only other thing that I have to say is, why can't I just move it north 10 feet?
That was my question.
I'm getting there. So the biggest thing is, if you look at some of the pictures I have submitted from just my lot, so that nice pretty open area, I'm trying to utilize the open area that we have available to us right now. The other pictures I submitted is, I'm not lying when we are in a wetlands. It is wet. I have a pond, heading from spring to summer for 2 months. So that would be if you were standing in the pool and looking north. So as you can see, there's the sunroom. That is also an issue. If we have to move it 10 feet and then try to keep it where it's at, it's going to be too close to the primary structure, along with the deck. So that is, again, and we're just trying to avoid really cutting down more trees and keeping the environment the way it is by using the existing open area we have. As for it being a nuisance to the public or anything like that, there's nobody around me but trees. Then I have the easement, or the right-of-way. The other thing I want to show is the, and it's on there too, but this property to the south, they've been trying to sell that lot, and that was newly plotted as a full lot. So that is one, my other thing is that if somebody bought that and was building a house on it, how could that?
It kind of kills the street once and for all.
Exactly, and that, again, 12 years ago, this was actually plotted as a full road. The city let it be absorbed by the southern lot. So, and they've been trying to sell it for years now, but it's plotted as a full lot with, the wetlands that kind of essentially go back like that.
And maybe it's even closer to the road there on that parcel than it is at yours, right?
Yes. Yeah, so that is why I'm asking for essentially it to be treated as just a backyard instead of a front yard setback, because it's just my backyard.
And putting the pool as far south on your lot is actually keeping it further away from some of your neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
but then having
Yeah.
it closer.
And even by keeping it closer to that right away, the next closest neighbor is 35 plus feet, for that lot that nobody's bought yet.
Right.
So that is what I am asking.
Got it. Questions for the petitioner from my esteemed colleagues here on the board? All right, well, thank you for the presentation. We'll deliberate.
I can get there on most. You'd indulge me to kick things off.
Go ahead, Josh.
There are some exceptional circumstances here. I think the entire development is replete with exceptional circumstances. The half-cocked road right-of-way that's never been developed other than a small stub. I don't think that there's any. It doesn't sound to me like there's any meaningful chance that road is going to move forward. If we do approve, I guess I would condition that if the road goes through, maybe the pool has to go. I don't know if that's too broad of a condition.
Maybe.
But I think there are exceptional circumstances. I think that there really doesn't seem to me to be any detriment to any adjacent property owners. This applicant is surrounded by herself, a fake road, and a lot of trees. So I don't know if there's any detriment here. Hardship, maybe it's self-imposed to the extent that like we talked about earlier this evening, you could theoretically get a smaller pool or maybe move it forward. I don't know that the circumstances here are self-imposed. As I look at that right of way, that's certainly not something self-imposed, and it has never really been developed in any meaningful way. So I can get there on the hardship piece.
Brian, do you have any
I ran out of steam there.
thought on, that's okay. Brian, do you have any thoughts on any of these tests here?
Not comfortable enough to go on
Okay,
record.
hey, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's fine. So I'll just fill in the nooks and crannies there, I think, Josh, if I might. Preservation of intent. Now, John, if that south lot line were just adjacent to another tax parcel, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Because the side yard setback, this pool as proposed is meeting the normal side yard setback requirements.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I think that, given the exceptional circumstances, we're certainly not going to be inconsistent with the preservation, inconsistent with this spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations. It would be meeting the regulations were it a normal side yard. The exceptional circumstances, it's not a normal side yard. It's the weirdest one we've seen in some time, with this half-dedicated unbuildable street right there that seems to have been decided isn't going to happen based on a recent plat of property to the south. But, and I think any future road construction could take all that into consideration and look at, you know, the land to work with there, which is all undeveloped to the south, and even, you know, rejigger accordingly. I think that this variance allows for the preservation and enjoyment of the same substantial rights which are possessed by other properties, and by saying, you know, oh, no, you've got a plan for the possible future development of this street that isn't really developable as it's platted shouldn't be on you. You know, I think that as a property owner with this, you're looking at the layout and the best utilization of the space in your yard. You've proposed that, and you want to see if we can find a way to say that that's okay. And I think that that's a reasonable request for a property owner. I don't see any detriment here. The trees don't care, and you know, this is tucking up this pool as close to the house as possible. I think that's a great place to put it. And we've heard from adjacent property owners who might be the only ones really concerned about this, that it sounds like they're willing to give you the rest of that land at some point. So maybe, you know, that's not an issue or a detriment. And I do believe that the hardship here is really just because of an artifact of a past historical land use decision about where a future road might go, and it actually got dedicated and isn't going to really exist in the future, or at least the foreseeable future. So from my perspective, all 5 of the tests have been met for this. So Brian, you're nodding. You want to make a motion based on the satisfaction of those tests?
Yes, I would make a motion to approve the variance as requested.
I would second that motion.
Great. We got a motion and a second to approve the variance as requested. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. I'm an aye as well. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. You got your variance.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry to make you talk about water more.
Not a problem.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Appeal 25-10. Consideration with possible action on a variance request from John Janquart of Brander Engineering, applicant on behalf of Georgia Pacific Corporation, property owner, requesting approval to exceed maximum driveway width at 1919 South Broadway. And before we start with this appeal, John, I have to ask my fellows here, please, if you can, confirm the following statements. I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. And before we hear from you, we'll hear from John. John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Looking at 44-1773, sub D, sub 2, driveway width at the setback line, 30 feet at a right-of-way or property line that's facing the street, 40 feet at the curb and gutter. Applicant seeks a driveway expansion, or not, reconstruction, would have a driveway width of 40 feet at the property line itself. This is an oddball. So this is the existing driveway. They're looking to redo this overall driveway parking area on the southern edge of the property, near the village of Schwabenon to the south, and directly along the village of Schwabenon with the right-of-way back into the road itself. So what you're seeing here is the existing driveway. They're looking to do plans that are very much of a similar nature to what's out here right now. But they're reconstructing, and when you reconstruct the driveway, you need to then meet the code for what it is today. And for a code today, when you have a driveway approaching a right-of-way, the width has to be 30 feet at the right-of-way and 40 feet max at the curb and gutter itself. Once you get into a property, you've gone past that right-of-way, if you want to expand your driveway to be wider, you can do that. But at the right-of-way, that's what the maximum standards are. This is an example of what they're trying to do as far as the construction on the site. The only part that's in play here is back over here near the right-of-way. The rest of this is not what's being considered for any of the questions here tonight. Okay, so this is what's coming into play. You're going to note the right-of-way happening here at a very unique spot compared to right-of-ways in general. typically speaking, you would see a right-of-way happen at what's called the back of sidewalk, or very close to it for a property. In this case, where the back of sidewalk is at, it is a 15-foot difference from the back of sidewalk. Because keep in mind, when we're thinking of our typical driveways, and where this whole 30-foot and 40 comes into play, you have your flare coming out for the apron.
Right.
It's where you meet and hit the drive entrance. In this case, the drive entrance goes another 15 feet or so past where you typically have the start of your drive entrance. It's back, the property line itself skews back to the east. Additionally, the odd part of this is, the western part of that property line is the village of Ashwaubenon. The eastern part is the city of Green Bay. The only part we're considering here is the eastern part. What happens to the west, where your typical 30 and 40 foot area is, we don't have discretion over.
It's up to the village.
It's the Schwabenons, yes. It's they're calling that. But where we have ours and why we're here tonight is at the right-of-way line, which in this case happens to be 15 feet off of the back of sidewalk, that driveway is requested to be at 40 feet wide. So that's where the folks at Georgia Pacific are looking for relief to allow for that to be 40 feet wide at the right-of-way. And as noted, once you get past the right-of-way, if you want to make it wider, you can do that. So we're not looking what it means for the driveway beyond into the property itself. You can do it. The question becomes, what does it mean at the right-of-way? And most typically at the apron then, but we're not looking at that lens here tonight, just that line 15 feet beyond the back of sidewalk.
Fascinating. Brought us a really interesting one.
And I want to make sure I heard it right. That yellow line is both the right-of-way line and the
Municipal
line-
boundary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're seeing some weird things here. This is Green Bay here, right of way is Schwabenon. Back over from this part, that's still Green Bay. Over that way, the property does a very large hodgepodge of municipal and boundary lines out here.
It seems to me like at the Georgia Pacific property, they just threw out some dice and pieced it all together with the way that's all laid out there. Maybe that is.
Yeah, typically speaking, if you look at, normally you're not seeing municipal lines go down right of ways, you're seeing them go along property lines. The times where you do see them go along right of ways, I'll give you, for example, Taylor Street up by Shawano, Howard to the west, Green Bay to the east. It runs, for all intents and purposes, straight down the middle of the right of way. This is weird where it does not. It's following a property line rather than following, or the right of way, rather than going through the, so Green Bay doesn't have jurisdiction over the drive entrance itself.
All right, questions for staff? All right, let's hear from the petitioner. Please tell us the name and company address is fine.
John Jinkwart, Brander Engineering, 975 Hanson Road, Green Bay, Wisconsin.
And John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah. John, I think he did a great job explaining it better than I could. I mean, obviously, what we have going on with Ashwaubenon and Green Bay and the municipal boundary lines, I mean, that's what makes it unique, right, of a property. The one thing that I will state is that I did talk to the village of Ashwaubenon. They're fine with the curb cut the way it is and the apron cut, and all I need to do is get a right-of-way permit and it's done. So, so for us to have to try and neck it down as it comes across the Green Bay lot line, when we could have semi-trailers turning in there with large radiuses and pickup trucks, and it's really a contractor entrance with all kinds of vehicles. And of course, Georgia Pacific is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if they got to go over the curb to make the turn and try and get hung up, that's just going to cause congestion and a safety issue on Broadway Street. So I don't think it interferes, in my opinion, at all with the life safety or health of the public. I think it's all about increasing the safety factor.
And it's current-
the fact is, though, too, I guess you guys, we're not doing anything, and I think John said that, we're just matching existing. This is maintenance. The pavement's deteriorated, they want to replace it, and that's what it is. We're coming in and matching existing, nothing new. It's probably been that way for, oh my gosh, for the 30 years I've worked there, so.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll look back through the records. It looks like the pictures get blurry once you get to 92 or 90. If you go back from any time after that, this is how this has looked in this area.
So I think it meets all the criteria. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the easier ones they ever tried to get. So, for George's sake.
Famous last words. No, in all seriousness, out of my mouth, I'll kick things off here.
Yeah.
I don't think that the variance is inconsistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations. Regulations are typically looking at, how that driveway enters the right-of-way. As far as the city of Green Bay municipal boundaries are concerned, it doesn't. So, maintaining what's current is consistent with the spirit and purpose.
Because an interior drive lane on a property can be whatever you need it to be.
Which is essentially
Which could be
what this
40
is.
foot wide, what have you, but yeah, we'd be creating a choke to
Right.
go through a line which isn't actually at the street, right?
Right. Exceptional circumstances, yeah, absolutely. You've got the right of way there, butting up right out before you even get to the driveway throat. Doesn't seem like it's something I've seen on the 2 or 3 years I've been on this board. I don't know that we're gonna see it too often again. Preservation of property rights, this road has been there, this driveway has been there for a very long time. They're not expanding the use in any way. They're maintaining, replacing existing. So I think it is necessary to preserve that access, meaningful access to that area of the property. I don't see any detriment of any substantial nature to adjacent property. Again, this driveway's been there and been used for decades in this manner, and there's not an expansion being requested. And I don't see any sort of self-imposed hardship here. It's not an economic issue. This is something that is really brought to us due to a quirk in municipal boundaries more than anything, as far as I understand. And at the risk of overstepping, I would move to approve for those reasons.
I would second.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second to approve the variances requested, given that we find that all of the tests have been met. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, you got the variance.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I enjoyed listening to your discussions. You made a lot of good common sense points. So not only on this one, but the other ones as well.
Great, would you like to join us in service? Planning Board of Appeals?
Yeah, it's great, it's a great learning experience.
More importantly, would you like to tell that to my wife?
So, and there might be a little conflict of interest, right? with me.
You just have to stay, recuse yourself from those and step aside, but,
Yeah.
and I think we're always looking for.
We are looking for more.
folks, so.
Yes.
Speak to Johnson.
You never know, I'm not that far from retirement, so, but, appreciate it, fellas, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
All right, so we have our next meeting this is not correct. I'm looking at it, our next meeting's in November.
June 17th.
Our-
Yep, it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, June
Tuesday.
17th is the next scheduled meeting. Gosh, there's something that's in my mind, maybe I don't know, look here, let me take a look at that.
Yeah, just so everybody is aware, because this was noted when we first started the calendar back in around the turn of the year. This is a Tuesday because there's a planning commission meeting, which would not typically fall at this time of the month, but because the council has their one scheduled meeting 8 days after the plan commission, or 8 days, so we have to plan our plan commission usually 8 days before the common council. So that report goes to the council itself. Whereas we're an independent body, and while alders can speak, they're speaking as citizens, not as representatives. So Plan Commission took precedent there on Monday.
I may have
Great.
to zoom in for that one, but.
Sir, if there's no other business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would motion to.
We have a motion from Brian, Josh seconded.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Stopped.
All right.
I'm officially